Hello everyone, it's SpawnPoiint and today we're taking a closer look at LG's 42-inch C2 and seeing if this new smaller TV could make the ultimate desk setup monitor. It's got some serious gaming focus features like 4K, HDMI 2.1, 120Hz and VRR, but it's also a great size for using as a laptop or a PC monitor. Today we will pretty much cover it all, including what it's like to use as a productivity monitor for text, photo and video editing, as well as what the gaming mode is like, watching movies and the pros and cons of the LG C2. I think this 2022 TV will be one of, if not the most popular TV this year, but it's not perfect and I will cover some of those issues in today's review. I also wanted to mention that Box very kindly loaned me this TV so I could make this video. I have linked to their website below if you wanted to check them out. So first and foremost, this is a TV. That means it comes with all of the usual features you would expect from a TV. Things like 4 HDMI 2.1 ports, a remote control, satellite input, and the home dashboard. And this is where you navigate through all of the streaming apps that you've got installed. And the C2 does an incredible job at being a TV. It looks sleek with the almost borderless design, it's lighter, slimmer, and takes up a pretty small footprint for its size. It's also got the new A9 Gen 5 chip, which I can already say is far faster than we've seen before. Navigating around the home screen or the app launcher is snappier and there's little to no lag. Now we've not had a 42-inch model before, so I cannot compare its weight to the C1 equivalent, but a quick look at the 55, 65 and 77-inch models, you can see there's a huge saving on weight. The 77-inch model, which I have the C1 on my wall, is now 6 kilograms lighter. So the C2 comes with a 4K OLED display, and with thanks to its self-lighting pixels, is capable of producing deeper blacks and incredible contrast ratio. And this means pretty much everything that you view on it just looks awesome, with these inky blacks and no light bleed or blooming. And the colours look great as well, and provided you tweak it in the settings, which I will cover later, the picture is sharp, punchy and overall really enjoyable to watch. And for watching movies and TV shows, this screen has once again blown me away. Not only does it look good, but from the content that I've watched so far, it runs really smoothly. Motion appears to be good, but I've definitely seen some slight judder depending on the movie that I'm watching. I have found that tweaking the true motion settings does help, and there is the option to enable Motion Pro, but this massively darkens the screen. And whether you're using this for gaming, movies or work, the viewing angles are stupidly good, to the point that you can sit at pretty much any angle and still view what's on the screen. You won't lose any contrast, colour or brightness. And talking of brightness, even though the 42-inch model does not have the brightness boost that we get in the 55-inch or larger models, this is still adequate for most rooms and I don't think you'd be disappointed. Right, so to see whether the 42-inch screen could be used as a productivity monitor, I've hooked up my 2021 MacBook Pro. Now the C2 does not come with a USB-C port, so I will be using the HDMI port instead, although on the MacBook it is unfortunately limited to 60Hz. And first impressions, coming from using a 38-inch ultra-wide every day, this feels massive. The width isn't really the problem, it's the height that's most noticeable. And having a screen this size means being able to snap multiple windows side by side, which could be a huge productivity bonus. And using the full width of the screen and seeing the entire timeline for video editing is just ridiculous. But there are definitely downsides to using a screen of this size, and that's when you're using a single app or document. The screen can sometimes feel slightly too big, like here where I've got a single Word document in the middle of the screen, making no use of those 42 inches. As for the text clarity, well, this is one of the most important things when using a TV or monitor, and I can tell you now it is really good. With it being a 42-inch screen, the PPI is better on this than the larger screens. I did need to reduce the sharpness to 0 as the default setting of 10 added some artifacts to the edges, but after this tweak I'm really happy with how it looks on the screen, and I would have no issue with using this screen to write documents or read text. Now the MacBook screen is pretty hard to beat when it comes to its colour reproduction, but I would happily say the colours on this look just as good. I did need to reduce the colour slightly on the C2 as it was far too vibrant out of the box, but for editing photos in Lightroom and then checking them on the MacBook, they look pretty close. Oh, and before I forget, make sure you change the input setting to PC. Changing this in the device settings will improve the response time of the screen, and without this enabled, there will be a very slight delay when moving your mouse around to what you see on the screen, something you will definitely notice and will probably annoy you. And another thing I want to talk about is ABL, or the Auto Brightness Limiter, as unfortunately it is still a thing. That means if you don't move your mouse or you don't swap apps regularly, the screen will gradually lower its brightness. Then as soon as you move your mouse or you change the view, the brightness pops back. Most of the time this is an issue when you've got a full white screen, so say a web page or a Word document. And if you're sitting on a white page for what feels like 10 minutes or so, the brightness will gradually lower. But this is actually quite rare for me because I'm always moving around or swapping tabs. Even just scrolling the mouse on a Word document is enough to prevent the ABL. Now I do understand you might be able to switch this off with a service remote in the settings, but it's not something that I've tried myself and is not a huge issue for me. but I can see eye strain being a concern if you're staring at the screen all day, and that's not because of its size or the brightness, but because it's a glossy screen. And depending on the apps that you're using, if it's in dark mode, you will likely see a lot of reflections. Now the C2 definitely has a far better anti-reflective coating compared to say the C1, but it is still a large black mirror. Saying that, pretty much every monitor or laptop that you can buy at the moment does come with a glossy screen, so that is kind of normal. And a question I've been asked a lot over the last week is it too big? Well, this is definitely relative to how big your desk is and how far you sit from it. My desk measurements are on screen now, so hopefully give you an idea of how it looks. I then sit around 3 feet or 90 centimeters from the screen. I'm probably about 1 foot too close here, so if my desk was deeper or I sat further back, it would be perfect. Now, although the MacBook and the C2 are capable of 120Hz, the MacBook is limited to 60Hz over HDMI. Now, there may be adapters out there that takes a signal from Thunderbolt to DisplayPort to HDMI, but from the research that I've done over the last week, I couldn't find the right answer. If this is something you can do, please let me know in the comments. But if you're using a PC that supports 120Hz over HDMI, the C2 will be perfect for working on. And unfortunately, you're not able to wake the TV from sleep via a laptop or a PC. There's no standby mode like we'd normally see with a monitor, which means you do need to switch it on and off separately. But one workaround is to use the Apple HomeKit, and you can switch this on instead of using the remote. Sure, it's not ideal, but it definitely works well in my situation. The C2 also has AirPlay and screen mirroring built in, so if you don't want to directly connect a device to it, you can essentially stream your MacBook, iPad or iPhone straight to it. So playing games on the C2 is nothing short of incredible. I honestly think this is going to be the best 2022 TV that's optimized for gaming. First up, it's packing some of the most requested features for gamers, including 4K and 120Hz support, VRR, ALLM, FreeSync and G-Sync compatibility. And whether you're wanting to use it for the PS5, Xbox Series X or PC gaming, this is the TV that does it all. Then we've got the Game Optimizer mode, which is a really cool feature that at a click of a button shows you the current stats of the game that you're playing. Things like if VRR is enabled, what frame rate you're running at, and the selection of profiles that you can choose for different games. And then the full Game Optimizer area includes settings for reducing the blue light mode, dark room mode, and input lag. Then if you want to edit the picture settings, you can do this from here too. Oh, and if you do use the game mode, it will lock some of the options under the picture settings, so things like noise reduction and true motion. Now, as we all know, we've had VRR on the Xbox Series X since launch, but we've recently had it enabled on the PlayStation 5. This means games run even smoother and in some cases faster. Take Spider-Man, where the developers have now enabled the 120Hz and VRR support, and it looks insanely good on the LG C2. The motion is perfect and there's no screen tearing or judder at all. And the response time on the C2 is as fast as it was on the C1, so it's rapid and every action or input that I've tried is noticeably instant. And then there's input lag, which is incredibly low, which is essential for any fast-paced or competitive gaming like Call of Duty. But there's one thing that I need to mention that could be a big deal for you, and that's the unfortunate removal of BFI at 120Hz, or black frame insertion. It's not something that I've tested or I can report having a personal issue with, but I understand this could be a problem for some users who have used it in the past. Now, there is a really cool feature that PC users will now benefit from, and that's the ultra-wide aspect ratio support. So by going into the Game Optimizer mode, you can now see there's an extra option here to change. You can go between 16:9, 21:9 or 32:9. That will work on any of those supported games. But one of the biggest advantages of the LG OLEDs over other TVs is the fact that it comes with 4 HDMI 2.1 ports. That means you can essentially use it for the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, while still having 2 spare ports for connecting to an AVR or soundbar, Apple TV, MacBook Pro or anything else. I mentioned during my unboxing video that I would show you all of the picture settings that I use, so here they are. Now, I've not calibrated the TV with anything externally, I've simply tweaked it for my own viewing experience. Generally, I start with the ISF Expert Bright mode and I edit it from here. I find that's pretty accurate and works well for me, so if you want to pause this section of the video and write down any of the settings that I'm using, you can do so. Some of these settings include SDR content on various streaming apps, Dolby Vision content which looks insanely good, and finally gaming sources. Again, these are for my own personal preference, but as I know a lot of you have asked, I thought I'd share them. Also, make sure you turn the energy saving mode and true motion off, or at least reduce it to a very low number. I then usually have my OLED brightness set to around 85 to 90, very rarely at 100. And some of you might want to use the OLED motion setting, but for me it's far too dim. The picture instantly reduces the brightness by what I assume is about 50%. Now the C2 does come with support for Google Assistant, Alexa, as well as Apple's HomeKit. This is great for adding it to scenes, routines, or just controlling it from your phone. Here for example, I can turn my TV on and off from the Apple HomeKit, and that's without needing to grab the remote. Or I can create a scene where it turns all of my lights on and off as well as the TV. LG do have their own app called Thin IQ. This does pretty much the same thing, so if you're not using a smart home setup already, this app will be useful for you. This year, LG have added 2 new picture modes. So we've got picture in picture as well as picture by picture, which allows you to display 2 inputs at the same time. Now I've used picture by picture before on my 38-inch ultra wide, and that's where I've had my PS5 and my MacBook running at the same time. But unfortunately, I couldn't get this to work on the C2. It appears only one HDMI input can be used at any one time. So that means the possibility of having, say, a PS5 and a MacBook doesn't seem to be the case. So will burn-in be a problem with the C2? Well, I've been using OLEDs for years, since the C7 in 2017, and I can say I've never had a problem. That doesn't mean burn-in isn't real, it just means the way that I use it has not caused any issues. If you're using this for gaming, watching movies or streaming TV shows, I don't think you've got anything to worry about. But even with my perfect record for no burn-ins, I would still be cautious using it as a monitor. We know burn-in is caused by having a static image on the screen for long periods of time, so things like the top navigation or the dock or sidebar could be a problem, but we'd be talking about hundreds and hundreds of hours without changing the screen at all. If I was to use this purely for working on my MacBook, I would likely hide the dock as well as a navigation bar just to be on the safe side. Saying that, there are various OLED care protection options in the settings, features that will make it almost impossible to damage the screen. Things like pixel refreshing, logo brightness, and pixel shifting. Now most TVs come with speakers built in, that's not unusual, but having speakers on a monitor is a huge bonus. Now when you're watching TV, you'll likely use the inbuilt speakers on this, which is packing a 2.2 channel down firing setup. And do you know what? These sound good. Sure, they're not as powerful or as clear as a dedicated soundbar or speaker setup, but they're okay. And as the C2 supports Bluetooth, you can pair a Bluetooth headphones like the AirPod Max. You'll now be able to listen to whatever you're streaming on the TV. Let's take a quick look at WebOS 6.0, which is the operating system that the TV is shipped with. We've got the home screen where any connected devices or smart home appliances are listed, and then we've got the app launcher which shows you all of the installed apps, things like Netflix, Amazon and Disney+. It all looks okay and is relatively intuitive, but one thing that is noticeably different on this year's model is just how fast and snappy it is. Navigating around and scrolling through the apps is now effortless, kind of how it should be, and that's down to the new A9 Gen 5 chip that we have inside, and it makes using the home screen, app launcher and the settings far less frustrating. Now this issue might not be for everyone, but if you have 2 LG TVs in the same room, you might have a problem with turning them on and off. The remotes can be set up so they only control one TV at a time, but pressing the power button will still control any TV within sight. A workaround for this is either to press the physical button on the back of the TV, or you can use the app instead. But to make the C2 the ultimate productivity monitor given its size, it would have been nice to have seen a USB-C and a DisplayPort too. But with all of that said, and all of these awesome features for gaming and productivity, is the 42-inch screen big enough or too big? And I think this depends on how big your desk is and how far you sit from the screen. For me, sitting at around 3 feet from the screen, the 42-inch is probably too big for playing games like Warzone. Yes, it's immersive, but I tend to lean forwards when I play and it just feels too big. But now when I sit back in my chair and I'm away from the screen, it is perfect. So I think for console gaming it's probably fine, but if you're sitting closer on say a keyboard and mouse, you might struggle. I reckon a 32 to 38 inch is probably the optimum size for me to play FPS gaming. But given the size though, I still think the 42-inch C2 is the ultimate desk setup monitor. If you've got a desk that's deep enough and you want the best of both worlds, an awesome screen for working on during the day and a gaming focused TV for those evening sessions, the C2 is the one to buy. I do think it's overpriced though. I actually think it needs to be about £200 or $200 cheaper to be value for money. And if you're not bothered about the 42-inch size and you're happy with say a 48-inch, I would just go for the C1 instead. But let me know in the comments if you would buy this 42-inch OLED or if you would go bigger or smaller. And if you did enjoy today's video, check out my desk setup tour, as it covers everything on this desk, obviously apart from the C2. And thank you for watching. Please like, sub and follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Until next time.